Alright everyone, and welcome to my Fury Warrior Tier 21 rotational guide. Unlike my Tier 20 guides, I'll be explaining single target, AoE, and execute rotation all in one video instead of having them separated out into separate ones, so you've got everything in one kind of short, concise place and video. I'll be talking about how Tier 21 affects your talent selection, legendary selection, and spell priority, and instead of just hitting a target dummy whilst I'll speak about it, I'll be showing encounter footage in the background, seeing how it plays out in practice. Before I get into it, there's a few caveats I'd like to add. All the information in this video is based off of the already existing written guides out there on places like MMO Champ Warrior forums, written by the lead theory crafters of the community. So think of this more as a spoken and visual representation of the written information already available. I will drop links to that information in the description below if you want to go and check out and read some more. So once you're at the 4-piece tier 21, you'll find that Bloodbath becomes the go-to talent on row 6. This is mainly because of the synergies it has with the tier bonuses, which in turn synergize well with Soul of the Battlelord ring. A big difference between tier 21 and tier 20 is it really focuses the damage around Rampage, whereas in previous tiers it was focused around Raging Blow, which kind of gave Inner Rage its value. However, Raging Blow was typically pushed much lower down in the priority when it comes to sub 20%. But with tier 21, it allows us to use Soul of the Battlelord, which allows us to rampage more often, making use of both tier 2-piece and 4-piece, as well as then devaluing Inner Rage enough that we can take Bloodbath, which has uses across the entire, 100 to 0% of the fight. Tier 21 really focuses on rampaging as much as possible with stacking cooldowns and quite a lot of focus on a strong execute phase. Because of the way the 4-piece bonus works, aka you getting buffed rampages within Battlecry, it means that Convergence of Fate still holds very good value and will probably be your best in slot trinket depending on item level, but more likely than not it's going to be your best in slot. Basically allowing extra Battlecry windows for buffed rampages, as well as allowing for two, well, depending on how the length of the fight, but typically 2 Battlecries in the execute phase, or if it's a really prolonged one, then possibly 3, but it really depends on the length of the fight. Right, so enough talking about it, let's get into some spell priority. So the spell priority once you have Bloodbath in tier 21 is Rampaging at 100 Rage, assuming you're still taking Prophet Berserker, which will be your go-to talent, Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, and then Furious Slash. Where previously we would prioritize Enraged Raging Blows, that is now no longer the case because of the fact that we no longer take Inner Rage. Raging Blow doesn't do that much damage anymore. So Bloodthirst becomes the priority because of the potential gains for Enrage over the entirety of the fight and the fact that it just simply does more damage than Raging Blow. This new priority and the fact that Raging Blow is now locked behind Enrage instead of just being on cooldown means that you will now get double cast occasionally, depending on whether Bloodthirst is on cooldown and whether you're enraged or not. It's quite possible you will now be double casting Furious Slash. So for the first time in a while, a double cast of Furious Slash will not look bad in logs. It will still feel bad, but it won't look bad and be wrong. So how that actually plays out is you will Rampage at 100 Rage, Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst again because it's back off cooldown, and then if you don't enrage, you'll Furious Slash, and if you did enrage, you'll Raging Blow again, and basically until you get to 100 Rage again, and you'll Rampage, and then just you follow that priority of Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Furious Slash. The priority within Battlecry does change slightly because of the 4-piece bonus, the 25% damage buff to Rampage within Battlecry, which means you want to be rampaging as much as possible within Battlecry, regardless of whether you get Frothing Berserker or not. So the priority is as follows: Battlecry and Bloodbath, Rampage, Odin's Fury, Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, and Furious Slash. With the additional rage from things like Pulse of Battle, Odin's Glory, Valor's Berserkers, and the Legendary Helm, you should never need to Furious Slash within Battlecry. And with certain procs from those things, you should be able to get multiple Rampages off. And the way Rampage works is that you are able to get the last couple of ticks of the preceding Rampage of your Battlecry within the first second or two of Battlecry. And likewise, if you Rampage towards the end of a Battlecry, you'll get the first few ticks of Rampage in the window and the last few ticks will fall out. So how that actually plays out in practice is Rampage just before your Battlecry and Bloodbath, Rampage, Odin's Fury, Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, and Rampage with the last few ticks of that final Rampage falling out the window. And then once you come out of your Battlecry window, you just follow your same priority-based rotation. I should also add that the preceding Rampage to the Battlecry window, you don't need to wait for 100 Rage. You can just Rampage as soon as it's available. And likewise, if you find yourself, very low on rage and you're going to have to wait 5, 6, 7 seconds to get enough rage to rampage before Battlecry, don't worry about it. Getting the first few ticks in isn't massive. It's just, it's nice that if you can, then you should. So that's your 100% to 20%. So now for the execute phase. If you're not using Soul of the Battle Lord, you'll want to be keeping Bloodthirst on cooldown for the potential of Enrage and extra rage generation, executing where possible to build Juggernaut stacks, and then only using Raging Blow and Furious Slash if you're completely rage starved. You can use Odin's Fury, again like in the previous tier. You can use it outside of Battlecry if you are low on rage. Use it preferably when enraged, but it's not always possible. I typically just roll the dice and hope for a Odin's Glory proc. So that leaves the priority at Bloodthirst, Execute, Raging Blow, Furious Slash. Pretty simple. Without the Soul of the Battle Lord ring, Execute phase really feels still pretty crap. So get the ring is all I can say, really. Unlike previous tiers, trying to maintain Frothing Berserker outside of cooldowns really isn't possible, mainly due to the fact that we don't have Inner Rage, so we don't have that guaranteed use of Inner Rage Raging Blow to generate your rage. The priority, if you are using the ring, is quite simple. It's just execute, execute, rampage, execute, execute, rampage. Obviously, that does rely on your executes critting. If you don't crit and you find yourself rage starved, then you will have to weave in a Bloodthirst or two to try and get you back up for those crits, etc. And also, you don't want to be using more than 2 executes before a rampage, and that's mainly just because you will quickly rage starve yourself if that happens. So for both rotations, the Battlecry priority is very similar. So you'll Battlecry and Bloodbath, and then either Rampage or Bloodthirst, depending on whether you're using the legendary or not. Execute, execute, Rampage or Bloodthirst, again depending on the legendary. Execute, execute, and then you're out of Battlecry and you're back to your standard execute rotation. The combination of the tier 21 4-piece, 2-piece, Convergence of Fate, Soul of the Battle Lord really gives Fury the potential to have a really strong execute phase now. A lot of the damage we do will come from execute. And what I mean by that is using Convergence of Fates will allow you 2, possibly 3 if it's a long fight, uses of Battlecry and Bloodbath in the last 20% of the fight, and 1 avatar usage, I should say. So this means that you really need a good awareness of when to time your cooldowns. So best thing to do is get yourself a time to kill weak aura. I think Exhaust's Raid Tools has one built into it if you use that, or you'll have to go and search for one. And basically when you're coming up to 20%, you want to be using you'll probably have Avatar, Battlecry and Bloodbath all off cooldown. However, there's very likely not going to be time to get 2 avatars in. So you want to just use Battlecry and Bloodbath as you're coming into execute. So then you start doing your execute rotation, and then you need to keep an eye on the time to kill timer. And basically when there's sort of like 20 to 30 seconds left of the fight, your Battlecry and Bloodbath should have come off cooldown and you'll still have your avatar ready. It's at that point when you've got maximum Juggernaut stacks and the boss is nearly going to die that you want to be using your last set of cooldowns and just spam and execute with huge Juggernaut stacks, and you really do just shoot up the meters. It's quite nice. The only thing is mistiming these cooldowns, or not getting the Battlecry reset because it dies quicker than you expect, or you have to move out for a mechanic. It can just really shit on your DPS, but it feels quite good to get that timing nice and really shoot up. Right, so we've gone over the single target rotation, so now let's do the multi-target rotation, which really is quite simple. You basically take your original single target priority and you replace Raging Blow and Furious Slash with Whirlwind, making sure to only use Rampage at 100 rage and when you've got the meat cleave buff from Whirlwinding. The good thing about tier 21 is that we're using Bloodbath, which is very strong on AoE anyway, where Inner Rage really wasn't, because with enough targets you wouldn't be Raging Blowing, and you just you lose one of your talents, whereas Bloodbath is the opposite. It loves AoE and it's fantastic, especially if the mobs stay alive for the full duration. And the 2-piece of tier 21 also spreads the cleave and spreads the dot, which again is brilliant. So the priority on 2 to 7 targets is as follows: meat cleaved, Rampage at 100 rage, Bloodthirst and Whirlwind, and that's really it. When you get to 8 or more targets, you will basically just be spamming Whirlwind and Rampaging to get Enrage. However, I don't really think you need a fancy graphic for that. During Battlecry, we obviously have the addition of Odin's Fury to put into the rotation, and you will want to be entering Battlecry with the meat cleave buff so that your first Rampage cleaves immediately. So the Battlecry rotation will look as follows. So Whirlwind before Battlecry, Battlecry and Bloodbath, Rampage, Odin's Fury, Whirlwind to get Meat Cleaver, Rampage, Whirlwind again, and Bloodthirst. You basically want to make sure that you're Whirlwinding before you Bloodthirst and Rampage to make sure you get the cleave going. And then outside of that, you're just back to your standard rotation. And that's really it. Single target from 100% to 0 and your multi-target. That's really all you need to know to make best use of your tier 21. There are some honorable mentions I'm going to make at the end of the video where I couldn't really find where to kind of slot them in the format. The decision between War Machine and Endless Rage is still the same as it's been for the entire expansion. Basically, if you can proc it reliably and get reasonable uptime in an encounter, then use it. There's no kind of like, if you can get 20 or 30, it used to be if you can get 30% uptime on War Machine, use it, but really you just kind of have to use your head and decide, can I get the buff? Can I make full use of the duration? And can I get it regularly? If yes, then War Machine. If no, then Endless Rage. Wrecking Ball can be taken as opposed to Avatar if you find yourself whirlwinding consistently outside of cooldowns. So things like the Antoran High Command, and the same logic can be applied to Nagentis' belt, the Whirlwind belt. If you can reliably whirlwind 3 or more targets outside of cooldowns consistently, then you can make that decision and use that maybe instead of the ring. If there's absolutely no execute phase, or it's a consistently heavy AoE fight, then Carnage becomes quite competitive, especially if you can use the extra rage generation legendaries such as the Head or Valajar Berserkers. And the way you basically use Carnage is you carry on your standard rotation and just use Carnage to use Rampage to extend your Enrage or before capping. Carnage obviously also has its place in Mythic Plus, where there's consistent AoE, maybe on very high fortified weeks, where things aren't dying in your cooldown window. You probably worked it out from earlier in the video, but you basically want to macro Bloodbath and Battlecry together, never desync them, and same as for the rest of the expansion. I mean, well, since Convergence of Fates came along, don't delay Battlecry for Odin's Fury, just use Battlecry and Odin's Fury in your next window. If you have 6 seconds or less left on Odin's Fury, you know that you can Battlecry and fit in Odin's Fury at the end of the Battlecry duration. And likewise, similar logic can be applied to Avatar. You can use Avatar sort of 10-ish seconds before Battlecry, because you know that Battlecry is 7 seconds, and so you'll know you'll get it in the back end of the Avatar buff. And that's really it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it useful. Hopefully, listening and watching helped you out in some way. Like I said earlier, all this information is based off of the MMO champ guides written by Archie. You can also find all this information in the Warrior Discord. Come and join. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next one. You can catch me on my stream on Koban_25. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one. Cheers!